Here's what's coming up on the world today. U.S. arrests man with explosive device in luggage at Pennsylvania airport. Cyclone Judy wreaks havoc in Vanuatu, while Cyclone Freddy kills 14 in Madagascar and Mozambique. Rail workers across Greece have embarked on a one-day strike after Tuesday's train crash, which killed at least 43 people. The walkout follows protests in Athens, Thessaloniki, and the city of Larissa near the site of the disaster. A passenger train carrying 350 people collided with a freight train after both ended up on the same track, causing the front carriages to burst into flames. Rescue workers are still searching for victims.
Around 1,000 demonstrators took to the streets a day after at least 45 people were killed when two trains collided head-on. The disaster has led to a national outpouring of grief and anger, with protesters blaming the government. Some hurled stones at windows of the offices of Hellenic Train, and police in riot gear dispersed them with tear gas. Earlier in the evening, things had been more peaceful with a candlelight vigil nearby.
We have gathered here outside the offices of the company with a lot of rage, shocked by what happened today, where so many lives and souls were lost.
The passenger train carried more than 300 passengers and 10 crew, with 2 crew on the cargo cabin. Many of the passengers on board were students in their 20s, returning to the Thessaloniki after a long weekend celebrating Greek Orthodox Lent. All trains scheduled to run today have been suspended after railway workers said they would strike. According to the striking rail workers, they had repeated calls for more permanent staff, training, and modern security technology, which had been ignored. A station master has been arrested in the wake of a crash passengers described as nightmarish that engulfed their train in flames just before midnight. Authorities are trying to work out how the trains collided. They say the two trains had been on the same track for many kilometers. The country's transport minister, however, has submitted his resignation, saying he took responsibility for the state's, quote, long-standing failures to fix a system of railways he says were not fit for the 21st century. A new transport minister has been appointed, and the government has promised an independent investigation that it promises will deliver justice.
The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the UN's commitment to Iraq's democratic institutions remains steadfast. He made the comments in Baghdad on his first visit to the country in 6 years, comparing the visit to his last when Islamic State controlled large parts of the country. The UN chief says the trip is one of solidarity and hope for the country's future. He also urged the federal government and the Kurdish regional government to work together to avoid further political deadlock.
Daesh was still raging. When I visited Iraq 6 years ago, the war against Daesh was still raging. Wide swaths of the country lay in ruins. Millions were forced to flee their homes. My visit was one of solidarity in a moment of urgency. Today is a visit of solidarity and hope for the future of Iraq. I expressed our steadfast commitment to support action that benefits all Iraqis through the United Nations Assistance Mission for Iraq and the entire UN family operating across the country. Action to bolster democratic institutions and governance at all levels to build trust. Action to improve public services and tackle corruption. Action to strengthen human rights protections and ensure accountability. Action to halt armed actors operating outside state control. Action to diversify the economy and reduce reliance on oil revenue. Action to bring down high levels of unemployment and create opportunities for decent work for young people. And action to build resilience against climate shocks and water scarcity that threaten lives and livelihoods in the heart of the Fertile Crescent where agriculture flourished for millennia. In all of these and more, national unity and the interests of the Iraqi people are paramount. I encourage the federal and Kurdistan regional governments to continue moving towards a structured, institutionalized dialogue and concrete agreements, in particular on the pressing issue of the 2023 federal budget, as well on the oil and gas law.
So this week, two important German federal ministers visited West Africa and discussed the topic of migration. Germany wants to encourage regular migration of workers and students from African countries to Germany, where there's a lack of skilled workers. Well, for more on this, let's talk to DW correspondent Warda Imran, who's in Berlin for us. Warda, good to see you. Germany is promoting regular migration in their country to visit West Africa. Can you tell us more about these centers for migration and development?
So this is a part of a migration policy shift that Germany is employing, which includes development cooperation to ensure that safe and regular migration takes place. This initiative, which has earmarked 150 million euros over 3 years, also plans to replicate these centers in different parts of Africa, including setting one up in Nigeria. The aim is to encourage young and skilled workers to find opportunities abroad in their particular profession. The German government likes to think of it as an economic development partnership with partner countries, even though one could argue that these skilled workers are very valuable in their home countries as well. But the aim of these centers is not only to provide information about employment abroad, but also how to fulfill requirements and get all kinds of support.
Now, Germany needs skilled immigrants, obviously, and they are sending this message to African countries. Why at this time?
Germany has been an attractive option for students and workers in the last few years, but this comes with a lot of bureaucracy. Now, Germany has realized that they need to ease up on the work visas, mainly because there is a shortage of workers in many industries across Germany and Europe. Even when there were airports that weren't able to operate to their capacity because of a lack of workers. And while many countries in Africa have high youth bulge, Germany and other European countries have an aging population, which makes it difficult to find workers to replace those who retire. So what's important is that a new act was introduced not too long ago, which promised to make it easier for people to find their way here. Through this, IT specialists like back-end and front-end engineers and others with high practical professional knowledge can come to Germany without proving prior education.
So you just mentioned a few there. What are some of the other sectors that require, these skilled workers?
Of course, the IT sector, as I mentioned, but there is a big shortage reported in the service sector, in the health sector, even in the manufacturing industry, including food manufacturers. Other industries like construction or retail trade have also reported mass shortages. A report by a German research institute also said that skilled workers are imperative for the expansion of solar and wind energy. So these include electricians, heating and air conditioning technicians, and software specialists. There are growing concerns that the energy transition that Germany has been talking about for so long could be made even slower because of this labor shortage. So it seems that the next few years and the workers that make their way to Germany may define how the country fares in the future.
Welcome back. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price has condemned Palestinian incitement to violence. It comes after Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich called for a Palestinian village to be erased, which amounted to incitement to violence. Mr. Price called on Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to publicly disavow such comments, calling it irresponsible.
Were irresponsible, they were repugnant, they were disgusting, and just as we condemn Palestinian incitement to violence, we condemn these provocative remarks that also amount to incitement to violence. We call on Prime Minister Netanyahu and other senior Israeli officials to publicly and clearly reject and disavow these comments. We condemn, as we have consistently, terrorism and extremism in all of its forms, and we continue to urge that there be equal measures of accountability for extremist actions, regardless of the background of the perpetrators or the victims. We've already noted.
Well, a man was arrested and charged with attempting to place an explosive or incendiary device on an aircraft after his bag triggered an alarm at Valley International Airport in Pennsylvania. That's according to U.S. authorities. The FBI said that 40-year-old Mark Muffley from Lansford, Pennsylvania, checked a suitcase on Monday for a flight that was heading to Sanford, Florida. The U.S. Transportation Security Administration said one of its officials located a suspicious item inside the suitcase that appeared to be a live explosive device. The FBI said in its formal complaints that the bag triggered an alarm, and officials found what they described as a circular compound hidden in the lining of the baggage, with 2 fuses and powder concealed in wax paper and plastic wrap. The airport said it had briefly closed a part of its main terminal while authorities probed the suspicious package. Meanwhile, the United States has placed a bounty on the spokesperson of the militant Islamist Al-Shabaab group. It offered $5 million for information leading to the identification or location of Ali Muhammad, also known as Ali Dare. He has been Al-Shabaab's chief spokesperson since May 2009 and is a senior leader of the group, according to the State Department. Al-Shabaab militants have recently carried out several attacks in Somalia despite government forces gaining ground in areas previously under the group's control. Let's check in on the weather now. At least 14 people have died, 7 in Madagascar and another 7 in Mozambique following a tropical cyclone. The number of people affected by Cyclone Freddy has also risen to 383,000, and that includes 226,000 in Madagascar and more than 163,000 in Mozambique. The World Food Programme's representative in Madagascar says recovery will take months. Hundreds of thousands of people are in need of humanitarian assistance. Flooding is unlikely in southeastern Zimbabwe, as Cyclone Freddy did not extend as far inland as previously forecast. Meanwhile, Tropical Cyclone Judy has wreaked havoc on the South Pacific island nation of Vanuatu overnight. Video footage from an eyewitness located in the capital, Port Vila, captured the moment when several large trees swayed violently next to an empty balcony and heavy rain and winds. Cyclone Judy has now weakened and moved southeast. However, locals have been urged to brace for a second cyclone, Tropical Cyclone Kevin, which is forecast to arrive late on Thursday and into Friday, bringing with it rain, flooding, and damaging gale force winds. Wood charcoal is the second main source of cooking fuel in Benin, and demand is rising. According to the World Bank data, the country turned over 3.3 million tons of wood into charcoal in 2017 versus 2.5 million tons in 2010. Inventor of the eco-sicker charcoal, Roland Ajave, is using unconventional raw materials to counter the destruction of Benin trees traditionally used for cooking fuel.
Dismayed at the number of trucks carrying piles of charcoal out of Benin's forested back country, Roland Ajove was inspired to look for a more sustainable alternative in 2017. Maize husks, cassava peelings, coconut shells and other organic waste have become raw materials for the 36-year-old entrepreneur's charcoal business.
I said, how come we're asked to fight against deforestation, yet we have so many bags of wooden charcoal being transported to our cities? So that's what motivated me to start my own research. It is 3 times more ecological than normal charcoal because it has a very, very high calorific value and allows the food to be cooked very quickly.
According to a UN Food Agency report, over 60% of the world's charcoal is produced in Africa, where it is sourced mainly from forests and woodlands, driving forest degradation. Only a small volume is produced sustainably. Ajovi is among those trying to change this. He and his employees collect, sort and dry the organic waste before burning it into a carbonized powder that is processed into briquettes and sold by the kilogram or in larger sacks.
Here, the process does not contribute to deforestation. We don't need to cut trees in the forest. We don't need to destroy all the vegetation to reap the rewards. It is the agricultural debris that have already become useless that allow you to make this coal. Also, this coal does not give off much in terms of pollution.
The UN Environment Programme, which also highlighted similar projects in Ethiopia, Cameroon, Kenya and Tanzania, says this kind of innovative charcoal production is urgently required to prevent further forest degradation and loss of biodiversity. For now, EcoSeeker sells at a small profit to wholesalers, but Ajovi believes as people learn of the properties of his charcoal, sales will increase.
Finally, on the program, an exhibition to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the discovery of a pre-Hispanic lunar goddess sculpture has opened in Mexico City. The Mexican lunar goddess sculpture, hosted at the Templo Mayor Museum, was discovered in February 1978. The finding was a milestone in the history of the Mexican archaeology as it shed light on the Mexica or Aztec culture before it fell in the hands of the Spanish in 1521. The exhibition includes the 458 archaeological pieces such as a lunar rabbit sculpture or that of the Lord of War. That's a wrap on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers. Bye for now.